That One Movie Podcast.
TOMP. All right, Jimmy. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. The final Marvel movie to be directed by James Gunn, who will now be banished to the DC mines after his work on this. Obviously,
until they soft reboot it 22 years from now and bring back the legacy characters.
Yes. So it's the third movie, the Guardians of the Galaxy trilogy. Some of the most well-regarded of the Marvel movies in general, I'd say. But yeah,
I've got a synopsis, Holden.
Yeah,
I've got one. Yeah, you didn't even need to stall that time.
Good.
All right, Holden. Spoilers for part 2, volume 2, I guess. So you haven't seen volume 2, just skip over this whole thing. Time code's in the description. All right.
I'd be surprised if you haven't seen it.
Still reeling from the loss of Gamora. All right, spoilers for Infinity War 2, I guess. Peter Quill must rally his team to defend the universe and protect one of their own. If the mission is not completely successful, it could possibly lead to the end of the Guardians as we know them. All right, Holden.
God.
95% of Google users like this movie, but it's got an 81% on Rotten Tomatoes and a 65 on Metacritic. Overall impressions, Holden, do you think those are fair scores? Do you think they're overrating, underrating? Where are you at?
Well, so it is weird. They are lower than the other two, I think, in general, at least as far as the critics go. Well, I think this movie is really good. Like, I might say it's the best movie since, like, the Infinity War Endgame, like, in terms of Marvel movies. I love No Way Home. I think this is just a better movie than that, though. Like, for me personally, No Way Home rides a lot on the, seeing those legacy characters and seeing them interact and everything. I think this beats it, like, probably for me. Just as a movie, I don't know which one I personally enjoy more. It's hard, but I think this is probably just the stronger movie post-Endgame.
Interesting. I think there's more things that I would pick apart here, maybe critique more than No Way Home. But I don't disagree with you that maybe even with that in mind, I don't know. No Way Home is such a banger.
It is.
It's such a good movie. I just that it was everything I could have hoped it was, and like it's actually a good movie on top of all the fan servicey Spider-Man nostalgia thrown on top of it. So I mean, I really like this. I don't understand why people don't like it as much from the critics' point of view. For me, I have not seen the original Guardians of the Galaxy in like 5 years. I wanted to rewatch it this week. I didn't get around to it. I've seen Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 twice, but again, not since a year after it came out. So I'm not exactly sure when that was. 2019, maybe
2018. I think that came out like 2017 in theaters.
So I've seen it twice. I have not, and then I saw this one once. So for me to compare them, I'm not sure, but I my initial thoughts are this is at least my second favorite one. I like it more than 2. I think the jokes in this movie land. I don't really remember really cringing at a joke. The only ones I didn't find that funny were the ones that were already in the trailer that I'd seen a million times.
Yeah, yeah. And even then, they still weren't too bad. Like, it wasn't awful seeing them again or anything. But no, I totally agree with that. It's different because I feel like when we watched The Suicide Squad, we talked about how James Gunn and despite, being largely hits with his comedy and everything, he is kind of scattershot with a lot of his comedy sometimes, and in his other superhero movies, it doesn't always land, but it's more hits than misses typically. But yeah, I'm kind of with you. I don't really think there were really any misses here. I think it is probably the most consistently funny one, which is weird because it's also the most consistently serious one.
Yeah,
like it balances. That's another thing I remember mentioning for the Suicide Squad. He's great at balancing those tones, and I think it's at its strongest here with just like taking itself super seriously at some moments, and it earns its doing that. But then also there's bits where it's just really funny.
Yeah, I mean, at times it's just a silly cosmic adventure. I mean, you look at the production design, set design, costuming, and it's just hilarious. And it's just like fun, weird, off the wall stuff, and then you balance that out with some really like heartfelt moments. And this movie just has a lot of heart, a lot of soul. You can just feel like it's almost like you're just in your comfort zone. Like, oh, these characters, this is the third movie. They've established those relationships. It's like when you get later on in a TV show, like you've done the work of getting the characters and creating those dynamics, and now you just like let them go and feed off each other's energy. The chemistry between the characters is great. It's phenomenal. I don't think any character, at least in the Guardians of the Galaxy, is like annoying or taking away from it. I don't think any of the jokes really take away from any seriousness of the moment. You maybe could have an argument for one or two, but for me, it wasn't distracting. I wasn't like I didn't feel pulled out of any moment by a joke. I think it only enhanced it for me.
So I'll probably talk about it a little more in What Are You Doing, but I did rewatch the first two and the holiday special this week in preparation, and I think that's something that is important to note is James Gunn's Marvel movies, he does undercut serious moments with jokes, but usually it works because he lets the emotional moments play out for what they need, and then the jokes are usually not like, it's usually not at the expense of the moment or anything. It's just kind of a way to end a scene, and it works just with his expertise and balance and everything. But it's just something that Marvel movies since that first Guardians movie have tried to do outside of James Gunn, and that's a common criticism with these movies, with Marvel movies, is undercutting a serious moment with a joke. And I feel like, it typically doesn't work unless you have someone like James Gunn or even like Taika Waititi, maybe more so in Thor Ragnarok, someone like that behind the camera.
Yeah, and I credit to James Gunn, credit to the editor too, for that. So I think that works really well. I think the characters are great. I think we have a lot of really good performances. It's a long movie, but I never thought it was dull. I never thought it dragged. I never got
jam packed. This movie there's so much going on in this movie.
A lot happened. This is one movie where I'm like, maybe you could have used a little bit more fleshing out some of this stuff. Most of my critiques is just like, I would have liked to have seen more of this or more of that. Than anything else. The antagonist of this movie, Holden, is the High Evolutionary, played by the guy who plays, what's his name, Merv or whatever, and
Mern, and I have his name here. I'm going to butcher it. I always butcher it. It's Chukwudi Iwuji something. Yeah, once again, probably butchered it. He's great in Peacemaker though, and he's also great here, I think. One of the things that I saw because I was trying to figure out why critics were, kind of harder on this movie as opposed to audiences and everything. A lot of them like to focus on the villain. They think the villain's kind of weak. But I disagree. I think the villain is honestly pretty great. And it's been made clear by when I was reading some interviews with James Gunn and also the actor playing him that like they were purposely not fleshing him out. Like he's just supposed to be like a genocidal monster, like crazy guy that is just unapologetically evil. We don't know his backstory, sure, but we don't need to empathize with him in any way, especially since his plot focuses so much on like animal abuse. I think it's wise to not try to empathize with him or in any way. Like,
well, yeah, like he's just so much like, if you have thinking and feeling on two different spectrums, or on the same spectrum on two different ends of it, like he is just so much in the analytical thinking side and 0% empathy. And all that. It's like he's a calculator. He's a computer. He's like, okay, if this is not perfect, then get rid of it. Try again. New batch. And I thought he was great. I think the whole history of eugenics is fascinating. This like pseudoscience and racism and ableism and all that's thrown into it, and how people rationalize these things that are really inhumane, thinking that they're like it's the benefit of the greater good. I think it's a really interesting thing, and I think it is something you can see like why he would do it. Like, he is the hero in his head, and you can understand it from that point of view, but then you also see
I mean, yeah, if
how
I
he's
mean, I guess
what's
like
that?
someone who's delusional, you could see that, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, I'm very delusional. Holden.
No.
How he's trying to justify this thing, because I mean, his goal is to create a perfect society, a perfect peaceful society, and he's like, well, gotta whatever Chris Evans' line from The Gray Man is, you gotta crack a few eggs to kill people, or whatever he says.
Oh yeah.
Gotta crack a few eggs to make an omelet. Is kind of his MO there, but I think he's really interesting. I think the performance is great. I love it when he is unhinged. He loses it. I love it when he's like trying to be warmer and nicer and kind of like fatherly to like a little baby Rocket.
And how quickly he turns.
What's that?
And how quickly he can just turn and everything.
That darker side to him, and his inability to see his own delusions and his lack of empathy and the lack of humanity in him. He didn't realize that really he was imperfect and he needed to work on himself and not others. But I thought he was a really interesting villain. I like how it was like, in the same vein of Thanos. It's like, oh, I'm providing this service to everybody, you're welcome, sort of thing. And I thought he was a good villain. I thought it was a good performance.
Yeah.
And I don't like how he was cruel to people and animals.
Not good. But yeah, I mean, all the rest of the cast is great too. I mean, all the Guardians are fantastic as usual in their own respective roles. But yeah, I'm trying to think of, I guess, like other new characters. You got Cosmo in this movie. I mean, Cosmo was in the holiday special as well, but Cosmo was pretty fun. Liked that.
One thing I will say is they kind of very, very early on in the movie, they set up a side arc with Kraglin and Cosmo, and it is just nothing happens for 2 hours, and then they're just in it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I feel like there was a lot of that left on the cutting room floor. Maybe it wasn't interesting, might have been fun. I didn't hate the fact that it was cut out. Maybe it messed up with the flow of other things, made it drag. But it did seem kind of weird to be like, oh, set this up and now forget about it, and then there it is again.
Yeah, it's very clearly like they were like the other Guardians. Like they were like, all right, you guys, you just stay here for like the movie. We don't have enough time to have you in the rest of the movie, which is kind of a shame. I mean, I find both of their performances fun, and obviously I like having a dog companion. That's always fun. But yeah, they were good, but could have probably been in it more.
I don't know how I feel about Adam Warlock in this movie. That was the one where I'm like, I don't think this was fleshed out enough. Like, I think you could have just not had him in the movie.
It's weird to me because, like, it feels like, obviously, so Adam Warlock is a big Marvel character, and so I'm sure, to some extent it was studio notes, but at the same time, like, the way that, like, the race of, like, perfect humans was crucial to the second movie, and they're obviously, like, I don't know if it's like a spoiler to talk. I mean, they're connected to the High Evolutionary. I don't know. I mean, I kind of assumed that going into this movie. That's how it was going to go down. But the fact that it's all kind of connected, that's revealed early on anyway. But it's all connected. And James Gunn has also said that he's had like most of these movies planned out as is. I mean, save some minor changes. He's had them planned out from the start. So I don't. It does feel like it was kind of shoved in there, but I also am not entirely convinced it was, and maybe it was just underdeveloped. I don't know.
I think I'm leaning towards the underdeveloped side of things because I think there is a way to make this work. And like you said, that it does connect. It does make sense. I just felt like that never really felt satisfying to me. Anything involving Adam Warlock and that storyline. But that's just me. We could dive more into that in spoilers. Otherwise, I thought Drax was great. His dynamics with specifically Nebula and Mantis, of course, is always good. And the exploration of like Drax's purpose and what he's around to do. And I thought he was hilarious, as you can imagine. Lots of cute animals. I think the movie is somewhat predictable, but even though it is somewhat predictable, I still thought a lot of it was very satisfying and came to a head.
It's predictable to a point, but it also kind of didn't end exactly where I was thinking it was going to. So
no, I agree. And yeah, no, I just like, I thought the movie was paced really well. I was entertained throughout. There's some really good action in it as well.
Yeah. And that's,
I thought the effects were good. I know it was never pulled out by the CGI. I was like, no, that looks bad. I'm sure if you paused it and whatever dissected it, you could poke holes and things. But from an immersion standpoint, I was never pulled out of the movie. So that's good. And I can't say that for every Marvel movie I've ever seen. Certainly.
Yeah. Well, regarding the action, upon rewatching the first two, I kind of had forgotten that all three are pretty like top tier MCU like fights. Like, I mean, I wouldn't say it's like, I'm always going to mention this for the next few months. It's not like John Wick 4, like, which I don't want. I know you can't really compare them or anything, but like it's very just well thought out. And they are pretty great fight scenes in all three of them, I think. And it's very easy to tell what's going on. Very fun kind of team up moves. They do some good 1-2 combos with some of the characters and everything. They make good use of being a team. So
yeah, lots of good things to say. I cried a couple times, Holden, full on tears.
You're gonna have to tell me when they were. I didn't quite cry. Their tears were welling up, but I didn't quite get there.
Well,
yeah.
Sorry that I have a soul. Yeah, no, I thought this was a very good, satisfying conclusion to the Guardians of the Galaxy James Gunn saga. I will miss these characters, the ones that will definitely not be returning. And I'll miss just looking forward to these types of movies, them and the Avengers movies, all that stuff. It definitely was bittersweet leaving this theater because I was like, dang, I really like that movie, but also I'll never get one of these again.
Yeah, for
the first time. So, but I guess you want to be left wanting more.
Yeah, which is good. And
So.
I think it's great that James Gunn's vision was seemingly pretty realized with how he wanted it from the start. I was reading something that apparently like even the Gamora dying thing, like that was maybe a wider Marvel decision, but if it hadn't been decided for Infinity War, he was like thinking about having her die at the end of Volume 2.
Yeah,
anyway.
I saw that as well. And that he didn't want Star-Lord to punch Thanos or whatever.
Yeah, I did see that too.
But I think it all worked out pretty well, all said and done. So,
couple things I wanted to mention before we move on to spoilers. One, we didn't mention the soundtrack, which of course James Gunn movie, so it's big focus of it is the soundtrack, and it is great in this. I mean, there's a couple songs that were in the trailers, but there's some other ones too, and it always just fits the mood of the scene perfectly. James Gunn just understands that so well, and he talks about how he just has it like in his head when he's writing the movie and everything, and he comes up with like secondary options. I actually saw too that this this movie had the first song that he was unable to get the rights for it. So one of the songs in it is actually his second choice, but
Oh wow.
he will not. He says he's not going to reveal which one because he doesn't want to be like, oh, I didn't really want that song in the movie. But
That's funny.
yeah, but I mean, it all works no matter what. It's not like one is standing out as obvious or anything. The other thing I wanted to mention, and we kind of touched on it earlier, but I want to mention it before I forget, is I was in the theater. I was watching this, and like the bit where they're kind of on the fleshy planet and everything, and they that's in the trailer. But I was comparing it to like Quantumania, where like in this movie there's like a ton of just really weird concepts, like weird races of aliens and everything, but it all congeals together really well because of James Gunn's vision and like just his world building and everything. Where in that movie, it was just like they just had like random things for the sake of being random. And that was something I remember criticizing that movie for, was it just kind of felt like, oh, there's a broccoli guy. Okay. Like it's just like whatever. There's just everything was thrown at the wall. But yeah, I thought it worked a lot better in this movie.
I agree. All right, Holden, what are you going to give this for your rating?
I'm at a 8.5, I think. Might even go
Very
up to
nice.
a 9 if I rewatch it. It's really good. So
Yeah. Not good enough to make you cry, apparently, though.
I wanted to. It's not like I was trying not to.
Yeah, I think it's a very, very good movie. Look, who is it for? It is for anybody who's a Marvel fan. All right?
Mm-hmm.
If you like remotely the first two, you're going to enjoy this. If you just, I mean, you gotta be a Marvel fan, though, I think. If you just go into this without having seen anything, you might have still some enjoyment out of it, but you won't understand as much. So, and you won't, you'd be doing yourself a disservice. So catch up on the Marvel stuff. And, obviously our podcast is going to be following all the new Marvel things. So then you can enjoy that with us too. So I would say if you're a Marvel fan, it's a slam dunk. It's a great movie. One of the best of this phase. And in the post Endgame era, it's one of the best as well there. So yeah, definitely James Gunn, way to go. You brought it home. You did a nice job. I'm glad you got uncanceled. This would have been a shame if this movie just never came to be.
Yeah, that would have been awful. I mean, even if going along with your recommendation, even if you're someone who's been like kind of falling out of love with Marvel, I think like if you liked the first two Guardians movies, it's worth coming back for this. And you don't really need to watch you don't necessarily need to catch up with all the Marvel movies if you don't want to for this one. Like, I mean, I would watch. But
I mean, if you haven't seen any Marvel stuff, you can't just go. I'm saying like you got to at least have seen the event like of Infinity War Endgame. Like you got to be at least there. If you're there, you can watch this. Yeah.
Watch the holiday special too if you want. It's not crucial, but it's you get some more context for some stuff.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, there we go. Let's dive into our spoiler review.
Perfect.
That One Movie Podcast. TOMP.